Hi, Fullness friends. I'm Dave Malik, and I thought I'd share today from the Gospel of Mark, this parable that we all know in chapter 8, verse 22 and following, where Jesus heals a blind man, but it's a twofold healing. He touches his eyes, and the man sees, but it says he doesn't see clearly. He sees people like trees walking around. Then Jesus touches his eyes again, and the man sees everything clearly. I think that this parable doesn't really address whether or not Jesus could have healed him the first time completely. It functions in a programmatic way to foreshadow the issue that's going to go on in this central section of the Gospel of Mark. Mark is kind of built in a sandwich form, in that you have Galilee and you have Jerusalem. Galilee is where everybody responds well to Jesus, and Jerusalem is where they reject him and crucify him. And in the middle, you have this discussion on the way to Jerusalem. And on the way, he talks about things with his disciples who understand, but not clearly. For instance, he asks Peter, "Well, who do you say that I am?" And Peter says, "You are the Christ. You're the anointed one. You're the Messiah." Then Jesus goes on to say in verse 31, "The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." Peter's response? He rebukes Jesus. Don't talk about this suffering. Jesus' response? "Your understanding is getting ahead of what I'm doing. Get back behind me and follow as a disciple," he says. The disciples have a hard time following this part of what Jesus has to say. As a matter of fact, when he goes to suffer, they're not there. Someone else has to carry the cross. Someone else has to be at his right hand and his left hand on the cross. Someone else has to bury him. John the Baptizer's disciples buried him in chapter 6, but Jesus' disciples are nowhere to be found. But at the end of the gospel, the message to the women who come to the tomb is, "He's gone before you to Galilee." In other words, let's do this again. I'm going to meet you there, and we'll walk through this again. I love how he pursues reluctant disciples, because I am one. I was given this book by Pastor Bart in 2012 by Jack Deere called "Surprised by the Power of the Spirit." I tried to read it, but it was hard. I had other voices in my ear, voices from seminary, that said all of these miraculous gifts ceased with the disciples, the apostles. But Jack Deere was one of my teachers then. He went on to more fully understand how the Spirit works, but it was hard for me. Oh, I knew some things, but this thing was harder. I've recently been listening to a revised version of the book called "I'm Still Surprised by the Power of the Spirit of God" by Jack Deere. And I can hear him. I graduated in 1984. This is 2020. Talk about a reluctant disciple. Someone who didn't fully understand what God was doing and had to be brought along. But the good news is that that's exactly what Christ does. "I've gone before you to Galilee. Let's meet there." And even now, he meets me and helps me more fully understand what he's doing. I don't know if you're a reluctant disciple like I am, but if so, I want to encourage you that he never stops pursuing us. He's someone who always says we can start this again, and we can more fully understand what I'm doing. I hope that encourages you. It has meant the world to me. God's blessing. Thanks.